Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world in 30 answers. Discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I'm with Jordan Fiorentini from Epoch Estate Wines in Paso Robles. Jordan, welcome, and tell us about Epoch.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice to be here, Allison. Oh goodness, there's so much to tell you. I will start with the fact that we were founded in 2004 by Bill and Liz Armstrong, who are geologists. They're out of Denver, Colorado, and they just fell in love with the town of Paso and the geology of the soils here. So we're mostly limestone / calcareous with shale. And so that's where we began. And then it kind of just ballooned out of there. They found a piece of property in West Paso that was once owned by a famous Polish composer and statesman. His name was Ignacy Paderewski, and he came to California, or the United States basically, in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And he was a concert pianist, and he was a performer. He was kind of like the Elvis Presley of his time. So he traveled around the United States on rail car and performed. And we didn't have TV or internet or who knows what back then. So that's how people entertained themselves. So he was an entertainer, and they would go see him from far and wide play. He was the character that Schroeder from the Peanuts is based on, because he would play piano so voraciously, and the dust would, he would make the dust come up, and his hair was crazy. I love that. And so he was traveling around probably between San Francisco and LA, and he started to develop really bad rheumatoid arthritis. So his doctor recommended, this is probably early 1900s, that he stop in Paso Robles and soak in the mineral hot springs that are rampant in the area. And he did that, and he fell in love with the area. And he decided to buy land and plant a vineyard. We have exchange notes from him between UC Davis, which was actually UC Berkeley, was where the ag program was back then, and himself asking, like, these are the type of soils and the climate, what should I plant? And so he planted Durif, which is Petit Syrah, and Zinfandel back then, and had bought 2,000 acres west of downtown Paso. So fast forward to 2004, when the Armstrongs fell in love with the area and were looking for land, they found the heart of the parcel that he had owned back then. Wow. It didn't have vines still, but it did have, it was beautiful, and it was pretty much, it didn't have a lot of trees on it in the wine growing area. It has, lots of trees in other areas, but there was a big cleared area and maybe 2 grapevines left. And that's how Epoch was founded.
Wow. So now that vineyard, we're in the York Vineyard. You have 2 vineyards?
We have 3. We actually have 3 vineyards. So that was the first vineyard. So we started planting that in 04, 05. And then Bill and Liz also found another parcel, also in West Paso, right off the 46 West. So those 2 were our 2 operational vineyards for a while. When they started, developing and coming into their own. It takes a while, as everyone knows, for the grapes to produce some fruit and some good fruit. And then I joined the team in 2010, and our first vintage had been 07. So that one had been bottled when I came. It was a very small vintage, but the 2008, 2009 vintages were both still in barrel when I joined here. And that same year, Bill and Liz Armstrong decided to purchase the York Mountain property from bankruptcy. So York Mountain is a historic property in Paso Robles as well. It's actually in Templeton, but we call it the Paso Robles area. So York Mountain was home to the oldest bonded winery in the county. And the cool thing is, if you go back in time, Paderewski, once he was producing grapes from his property close to downtown Paso, had asked the York brothers from York Mountain Winery to make his wine. So in purchasing both properties and having the grapes travel from Paderewski to York Mountain to be made into wine, at Epoch, we put the history of Paso back together.
That's a beautiful story. Yeah. So what is your total acreage?
Well, we have about 140 acres planted. And that's when I talked about the open land. Like we didn't have to take any oak trees out to plant those acres. But we have about, I think, over 800 acres total for Epoch. And I didn't mention too, so when we purchased the York Mountain property, it had a defunct vineyard that had been decimated by deer because nobody deer fenced back in the early 1900s.
And there are a lot of deer. Every time I drive around, I'm amazed at how many deer are just standing on the streets in the middle of the day.
Especially in downtown Paso. Yeah, that is something you see all the time. Well, I guess back in the day, like there weren't deer here. They infiltrated at some point. And so we had an area that had been a historic vineyard, but no longer had vines on York Mountain. And we replanted that in 2015 as well.
And you do 100% estate fruit?
Yes, we're 100% estate grown. I get to oversee the grape growing and the winemaking. I have a fabulous vineyard manager and assistant winemaker that help me in those quests. And we do sell fruit to some other, I think, very lucky and fortunate winemakers in the area and in Napa.
So I'll ask this in sort of a three-part because it usually comes out in one sentence. What is your total case production? What are the grape varieties you grow and make? And where can we find your wines? Are they available nationally?
So yes, we make, depending on the year, again, we're estate grown, so we're very, exposed to the ups and downs of Mother Nature, but we're around 700 to 7,500 cases now. We grow mostly Rhone variety grapes because of the soils and the climate. We're very indicative of those same features in the south of France and St. Priorat for weather-wise. So we grow mostly Syrah, Grenache, and Mourvedre. We also have Grenache Blanc, Viognier, Roussanne planted. We did plant Petite Syrah and Zinfandel in honor of Paderewski. And we have Tempranillo planted as well here. And we are distributed nationally, not in every state, but we do have national distribution. It's not with all of our wines, but some of them are very small production. And we also sell them online on our website, which is epochwines.com, and through our tasting room, which is open by appointment every day of the year.
You beat me to that's what we end with. But So what is your first memory relevant to wine?
Oh my goodness. So my father especially is just got into wine after he had some success as an attorney from Atlanta, Georgia. And I honestly, I think he started collecting, he got really lucky, collected in 82 Bordeaux, which ended up being one of the finest vintages on record. There just never was a bottle of bad wine on my table growing up. So it just was kind of like a given for me. It's not a very normal thing, I think, for an American from Georgia to have fine wine on the table all the time. But I think it kind of had, I tried the wine, I was into it, I loved to cook, but when I went away to college and I realized that people were buying box wine and I tasted it and I thought, oh my God, there is such a difference here. Like I didn't know that bad wine existed. So that's kind of one of my first aha moments where wow, okay, there's something to this.
Well, let me ask you, so you had an aha moment that you were spoiled and got to drink lots of good wine, and your aha moment was that there was bad wine.
Yeah.
But did you have an aha moment of a wine you tasted where you just said, wow, whether it was about a variety, a place, about wine in general, that set you on a path at some point? And if so, what wine was it? Do you remember?
So I'm
sure there are a lot of wines.
There's been so many wines because, like I said, I've had wines for so long. When I was younger, I didn't really pay attention because I was so young at that point. But then, let's see, when I graduated and I undergrad, and then I studied in Italy, and again, that was kind of like a wine aha in the sense of oh, it's not that expensive, but it's really great here. But I still was just having fun. When I worked, it was. I've had, like I said, I've had a lot of wines that I've liked, but I remember I got to work at Arajo, which is a famous, the Islay Vineyard in Calistoga. It was my second vintage ever. And when I tried their wine and tried the grapes, kind of at the same time, it was amazing to me because I could taste the fineness of the tannin in the grape and then see how that related to the wine. Because if you talk to me as a winemaker, you'll see that I am very into the process. And because I love to cook and I love to make something. And so having those two things together for me was a really important moment in wine.
Now, I know you've lived in Italy. Your husband is Italian. You imported him back here. When you think about traveling the world, who do you think drinks the best in terms of quality?
Oh, wow. That is, you mean in different countries?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. He'd probably be. Okay, so in Italy, wine is kind of like a commodity on the table, like every meal, right? You have, and it's great wine, even if it's inexpensive. And then there's the really expensive wines there that are very fine. But I would have to say the French, because when I've been very fortunate and gotten to go on very many cooperage trips to France. And when you see that you're in this tiny town, and I've been in tiny towns in rural Georgia, right? So I'm trying to correlate this. That makes this specific kind of cheese that only comes from this one town, and then they have a wine, usually made in the same town, but not always. But they have decided that goes perfectly with that, and then you try it, and it's like this, whoa, how did they figure this out? Yeah, if you correlated that to some small town in the United States, you can't even.
No, I would argue that Italy. I kind of traveled my way through Italy in search of everywhere I would go. I'd say, "What's your specialty?" And what cheese? What wine? What pastry? What wine? What pasta? What wine? What pizza? What wine?
And they have it too. It's true. It's so true. Yeah, but I do I can't, because the Italian food to me is the and the wine that goes with it is the full package. But yeah.
I'm going to come back to that question in a second, especially because you said you cook a lot. But I'm curious, if we were to come into your home, what sort of wines would we find in your cellar? I don't know how big your cellar is or what's in there, but what would we find?
So I was joking with my my winemaking team because it's harvest yesterday. It was our last day of picking grapes yesterday, and we had a bottle of champagne. And I said to them, whenever I have a bottle of champagne, it's like money burning a hole in my pocket, because I know where every bottle of champagne is, and there's usually none left. And, that's just how it is with me, because that is the first thing I would drink. So I wish there was a lot of champagne in my cellar, but there's not, because I drink it all. But I have the most eclectic wine cellar, and it's because my husband is also in the industry, and he's a supplier of barrels and winemaking equipment all from Europe. And so he gets all these crazy wines from his clients, and they're awesome, and it's so fun, but they're all so different. And so we have a mixture of that. And then I would say I love Pinot from Oregon, and obviously Burgundy. I love white Burgundies. If I had, the white Burgundy and the champagne, they get drunk all the time. So they should have their spot, but they're consumed.
Yes. Is there a particular wine from your cellar that you opened recently that tasted really, really great? And it might be the champagne you drank yesterday.
Yes, that was actually a sparkling wine. I shouldn't have said it was champagne. It was a J. Schramm 2009. I got it on a trade with one of the winemakers there. It's their highest end. It was amazing. That was perfect wine for the end of harvest. So that was great. I could talk about that one. I'm sure I can. We open wine. Yeah, we get to open a different fun wine a lot.
So do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
There's a perfect variety for an area.
Ooh. That was a very impartial, nice, quick answer.
It's true.
So let me ask you this one. What's your opinion on wine critics and scores?
That is a very difficult question to put me on record saying. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's really hard. So, but we have to go back to what they are. They are critics, right? And so they are giving their critical opinion, their personal opinion. So if it is a critic that makes it very clear that that's what they are doing, whatever they are doing, I am okay with that. Mm-hmm. When it becomes, and the point system has made it difficult for this, it's almost like getting a grade. Because a grade is like, you got this answer right or you got it wrong, right? So the point system is really difficult, but it's the only thing that really has stuck. But when it gets presented as, this is the grade of your wine, period, I don't really like that so much, because we took the critic part of it out of that.
So You've given us a little insight, and I'm going to take some guesses what these answers are, but I'm going to let you do it. Red, white, or rosé?
Depends on the hour of the day.
Okay. Still or sparkling?
That's hard too. I mean, like I said, is that like fine sparkling wine or champagne or? I can't answer. You're like asking me to choose between my favorite children. But I do like sparkling a lot, as you know.
So for sparkling, champagne or from somewhere else?
I mean, champagne first, and then, everything has its place, but other very finely made method champenoise wines are wonderful as well.
So because you are so broad and you are an equal opportunist for all wines, how do you approach pairing wine with food? Do you follow rules, or do you look for certain things, or do you just see what the mood takes?
I love the food and wine pairing, that's happening around the world in the Renaissance or what's established, like in France. That just blows my mind because it already exists. And I like thinking about if it's going to work or not. I really think it takes trying it. Because sometimes people say, oh, rosé goes with this, or, a Grenache goes with that. But you actually have to have that wine and make sure that wine is giving you what you think it is. I'm one of those people sometimes the pairing is amazing, but other times it's, okay. And I like to keep if I'm doing a food and wine pairing dinner, I like to keep all the glasses on the table and go back and forth to see if maybe a different wine. I would say I'm a non-conventionalist. I like pairing, I like putting white at the end of a tasting, and I like pairing rosé with a heavier course sometimes too.
But that's a good idea. Put out a lot of glasses, a couple different wines, and just go back and forth and see what works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally.
So, for someone who hasn't tasted your wine, what do you think they're missing out on?
So, I've been at Epoch for 10 years. This is my 11th harvest. So the wines are very purposeful. And I'd like people to understand that what I put in the bottle is something that is the best representation of our vineyards, which is our wine growing practices in a certain vintage. Trying to have a really pure expression of that, as well as if it's a blend, why is it a blend? It's intentionally a blend of X, Y, and Z to give you X, Y, and Z. Not to take so that's the common part of it, but then to wine is art, right? And so to see where that takes you afterwards.
I like that, purposeful. Well, this is my first visit to Epoch. I mean, I may have been here years and years ago, but of my recent memory, this is my first visit, and you have started me off welcoming me with a rosé, which I find very appropriate, which is a Mourvèdre Grenache Syrah. But I'm curious, if space aliens were to land on your property right now, which of your wines would you want to present to them?
Are these, so I'm space aliens that have a wine background?
You just want to impress them.
I just want to impress. Well, I did bring, I think it depends on, God, I love them. Let's see, I'm picking between children again. Usually I would.
I'll let you pick through your children in other opportunities, so don't feel like you're giving one favoritism now.
Right. I would probably show a Grenache or a Syrah, a pure blend of one of those two, to give them a real feel for the area and what we're growing.
Okay. So you just finished harvest and another vintage under your belt. You said your 11th one. Congratulations. So I'm curious, do you find that there's more variation from vintage to vintage, or do you find more similarity?
Well, first I want to say this is my 11th vintage at Epoch, but it's my 21st.
Well, great. So you have even more experience.
Yes. So there is a lot of variation from vintage to vintage, and I love that. I think that is what keeps everything really interesting. We're not making Coca-Cola, and I want to embrace the vintage in the wines. And
is it a big difference, or are they nuanced differences?
It depends on the year. If you have a cooler year and a warmer year, those are big differences. But the job of the winemaker and the vineyard manager is to do the right things in the vineyard and the winery so that there's a commonality in the wine, but so that all those things can show, right? I find a sense of place. But I know that, this is a wine from 2011 or a cooler vintage versus, this is a wine from 2014, but I still get the Paderewski-ness in this wine.
And are there any signs or omens that you look for that will help you determine what a vintage is going to be?
That's so interesting you say that because most of us look at like the rainfall of the year and then we're just going about our stuff, doing our thing in the growing season, doing all the things that need to happen in the vineyard for the fruit to make sure we're going to have the best crop possible. And then August hits, and we seem to only ever talk about what happened in August and maybe September. It's such a hot year because August is so hot, which that will determine when your vintage starts.
Right. But
what happens before that is really important for tannin development, for color development, flavor development, for like where the acidity is, the size of the berries, all those things. And so there's certain points in the growing season now that we sort of pay attention to. But yeah, I mean, the weather in August and September are pretty much going to determine how fast, when you start picking and how fast the harvest is. I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of went off on a tangent.
No, that's okay. So do you have, I know you just said that you finished harvest and you had a bottle of sparkling wine. Do you have any sort of traditions or good luck rituals that you do at the start of harvest?
Yes, and it involves a sparkling wine again. So when we bring in, the first thing we crush every year is either our Viognier, whole cluster press, or a Syrah for rosé in the whole cluster pressed. So again, it's made like a white wine. So what we'll do is we'll invite the whole team from the tasting room, vineyards, winery, everyone up to the winery. We take the first juice out of the press pan. We take the sparkling wine and we pour it together. It's almost like a wine mimosa or a grape juice mimosa, and we all cheers to that. That's our harvest ritual.
So, I'm visiting your winery. You finished picking, you finished your crushing for the vintage. It's pretty quiet out there in the winery, and I don't know if they're being quiet for us, but I didn't hear any music playing, which is sometimes typical. And I'm wondering, do you ever play music to your wines, or is it just for yourselves, or do you ever talk to your wines? Do you ever talk to your grapes in the vineyard?
That's funny. There was music on earlier. I think they did turn it off because you were coming. Because I was like, we're going to do a podcast. And so they're very thoughtful. And we do. Yesterday it was not quiet because we were crushing. And yeah, I don't know why it's so quiet right now. I really think they're trying to be quiet. Let's see. So it's funny that you asked that question because, occasionally, and we try to avoid this at all costs, but you get a fermentation that has a problem. So one year I remember I was trying to restart a stuck fermentation, and that means like when the yeast didn't complete the fermentation. And luckily it doesn't happen very often, but it's, the yeast are alive, right? And so we were trying to keep them healthy and happy. And so it was getting to be cold out because it was towards the end of harvest, or the harvest season. I think it was November. And we warmed up the lab. We turned the heating on in the lab. We started playing opera, and we were growing the yeast because we thought, like, hopefully that would make them, do a better job. But I mean, during harvest, we put the music on, and it's whatever. You need something upbeat during harvest because you're tired. You're so tired. I love putting on Aretha Franklin or Jackson 5, Queen, something like that because. Sometimes you're really tired and you just really want some, maybe Saturday or Sunday morning, put something slow on. But other than that, it's usually we got to keep this party going. Yeah.
So the music's more for you guys than the grapes, except when you're trying to restart your yeast.
Totally. If the people working on the wines are happy, then the yeast are happy and the grapes are happy. Yeah.
When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I feel like I wanted to be I mixed potions a lot. I thought maybe that's what a doctor did, but it kind of makes sense now. I was some kind of potion mixer.
And now that you are a full-grown winemaker, I know you said that you have 2 kids, but what do you do in your free time?
Oh, wow. It's the end of harvest, so I can't even remember right now.
Okay. This season you have no free time.
Okay. So.
You barely have family time at this point. But when you have free time, what do you like to do?
Oh, I do. I used to let me reflect on what I find myself doing on the weekends, which is cooking is a big deal for me. So usually have friends over, cook some kind of fun meal. I'm not a really good recipe follower. I kind of just do what I feel like doing, and I don't like to make things more than once. I love to go to the beach, or, if we can go on a quick road trip with my family. I love doing that because the area that we live in is so beautiful. I love being outside.
So you cook a lot, and if you're planning a romantic evening for you and your husband, I don't know if that means cooking or if it means going out. Is it fair to say that wines that make for a romantic evening are white Burgundy and champagne, or am I missing something?
I mean, yes, those actually do, but I do find that those are kind of beginning of, like, if I have one wine to drink for the night, I'll be happy, but if we're going to have a romantic evening, we'll probably open a red too, because that probably means a heavier meal.
And what kind of red would typically be opened? I mean, obviously notwithstanding sort of the mood and the pairing and the season, but...
I do love, I love Pinot, maybe because I don't make it, I love it too. But I haven't been able to get into I like red Burgundies a lot, but I like white better because it's probably like what I can afford and what I can age, because I actually keep in my cellar. So I do love the Oregon Pinots. I'm like, I mean, you can probably tell from this. It depends on what I'm in the mood for, because if I haven't had a Napa Cab in a while, I love opening that. Mm-hmm. I love showing off a new wine. If we have friends over that they haven't tried yet that I know they'll love from Epoch. So, but yeah, the romantic dinner, it's just the two of us. It'll be maybe, I have one wine to choose. It needs to be red. It's probably
No one said you had to pick one wine for okay. So when you think back and look at your life, is there a piece of advice that you were given that you kind of live by or work by or enjoy? And if so, can you share that piece of advice and who gave it to you?
Yes. There's a lot of, I just have one at the top of my head, but this is just a random question. So Bill Armstrong, who's such a great person, if anyone gets to meet him, he's so charismatic, and he just has the best, little tidbits on life, like little sayings that really, you're just like, I've heard, when I hear great sayings, I wish I could remember them and repeat them in the right time like you do. But he always has this one that says, and I tell it to my kids, it says, if you can't be interesting, be interested. And so I try to be, there's an airplane. I try to be very interested in whatever I'm doing or whoever I'm around, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I like that. And if you could give a piece of advice to our listeners?
I just say, I've always just followed my heart in everything I've done, with how I've made the wines. I try not to let the little things worry me about them. And just looking back over the last 10 years, look at the big picture and follow your dreams and follow your heart. That's what I've always done.
So looking back over the last 10 years, although you've been in the wine industry for
21.
You've been in the industry for 21 years. When you look back, you have a long future ahead of you. But when you look back, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements to date?
Oh my goodness. I think having been able to formulate what I wanted to do in the vineyards with the winemaking here at Epoch, alongside being a mom, and raising children, 2 daughters, and hopefully being a good wife. I mean, I can't say I did everything perfectly along the way, but we're still here and kicking and happy. So,
and it's a good accomplishment. I wouldn't say this is your greatest achievement at work, but you have 4 harvest interns this year, and they're all female. So I think that's a great achievement.
Thank you. I'm so stoked. I keep telling people it wasn't by design, but by coincidence, or even better yet, serendipity.
So complete this sentence for me. A table without wine is like...
Wow, that just seems like it's mute.
Okay, now I want you to imagine another... This is the fun part. We play games now. Imagine a scenario. It's a restaurant. There's a table with your wines, the Epoch wines, sitting on the table. And the paparazzi are really excited. They're outside taking pictures because someone really significant is at that table. Who of significance, living or deceased, would you want to be at that table drinking your wine?
Goodness, these questions are so... oh my gosh. Oh, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Okay. I like it. I do not dissent on that one. So you've talked about some of the wines that you love. I'm wondering if you could tell me, if you were sent to a deserted island, which 3 wines you would take with you.
We talk about we talk about desert island food, desert island wine. Let's see. Which 3? Are they like, they don't have to be Epoch wines?
No.
Okay. I would take our rosé. And
Fair
some
enough.
Champagne. Oh my gosh. I might have to take, I know. That's hard. Okay, I'll take a Champagne, a Pinot, and then a heavier Rhone-based wine. So I can have like the full gamut.
Anywhere particular your Pinot would come from?
I mean, I think either Oregon or Burgundy.
And your Rhone wine?
From Paso. Yeah, because I think after a while of not having my wine, I would be so hungry for it.
Well, now we'll play a little game of wine and music pairing, talking about some of the wines you spoke about, as well as I'm looking at a beautiful plethora of wines sitting in front of me. I'd love you to be able to describe what kind of music you'd want to be listening to when you drink this wine, or what kind of song, a particular song or a genre that this wine conjures up for you. So since I've been sipping on your beautiful rosé, let's start with that. The 2019 rosé, which again is Mourvedre Syrah, Grenache Syrah.
Got it. So I always want the most beautiful, like pale salmon pink color, and it totally reminds me of like looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. So I always think of like the Edith Piaf, like La Vie en Rose for that one, because it just makes you happy. And if you have enough, you could be like, you know, on the street in gay Paris, or you could be wherever you are, but just happy.
I like that. So next we have your Epoch White. So tell me just quickly what the grapes are.
That's a Rhone White. It's a Grenache Blanc, Viognier and Roussanne. Oh my gosh. And what kind of genre? Oh my God, that's the genre. That's
or a particular song or artist.
Yeah, that one kind of goes. So it's like a wine that is like light or it could be considered light and crisp when it's young, but then it grows into something a little bit deeper. And I don't know, maybe like a Taylor Swift type, like when she was younger to like when she got a little older and more serious.
And crossed.
Kind of fun. Yeah. Crossed over to other genres.
And let's see, the 2016 Block B.
Oh goodness. So yeah, here we are with the Syrah. This is one of my favorite Block Bs, which is our 100% Syrah from one block on our Paderewski Vineyard. So it's a very pure expression of that site and the vintage. And oh my goodness, what would to me, this is like something rich with like a rich voice that just like brings me, like makes me reflect back on my life and all those things. I don't know. I grew up listening. My dad loved Richie Havens, and I love that voice. Something like that. Bob Dylan, kind of. I don't know. Just it stands the test of time.
Okay. And what about the Veracity?
So if you can't tell, I like female singers as well. I like everyone, right? But the Veracity is sort of this. It's one of the wines I'm extremely proud of because. I wanted to present the beauty and power of the Mourvedre grape in Paso Robles. This wine used to be our strict like Grenache, Mourvedre, Syrah, GSM. Then I kind of moved it over the years to being Grenache, Mourvedre heavy, and then I finally flipped it to being Mourvedre, Grenache, Syrah, and it's here to stay. But I'm just like, I'm so proud of like the way the Mourvedre shows itself, but then plays with the Grenache and Syrah. And so I don't know. I got to go to Sarah Bareilles concert in Paso actually last year, and she was just so amazing. But there's this one song where she had like all the instruments going together, but then with her voice, it's called Fire. But it was just so cool. So it kind of reminds me of that. And I think it's a song or an album maybe that is into her career too. Mm-hmm. So it kind of goes along with that wine for me.
And the last wine we'll do is. If I can... Sensibility.
This is Grenache. Yeah, and it's either 100% or it's almost 100%. And I love, if anyone knows me in winemaking, I love fermenting and aging in concrete when it makes sense. And Grenache is one of the varieties that makes the most sense on. This one, because this is like kind of like my Pinot, right? This is the weight of a. I mean, if it's if there's a Pinot of the Rhone or a Pinot of Paso Robles. Oh my gosh, yeah, this wine. I don't know. I can't think. I mentioned all the people I just love. I mean, all different kinds of music. This is one that I think like everybody loves. So like it's kind of like a pop song, but then it's like more serious too. It's got more serious words. Yeah.
We're going to make up our own genre there.
I think this exists for people. It just depends on who you think speaks to you. But hopefully this wine will speak to you.
Well, okay. I won't put you anymore. Put you on the spot for that.
I do more of I do this synesthesia, but I do it with my tasting notes where I draw the shapes and how they taste on my palate, which I have hanging on my wall. So I don't do music that much with it because I wish I was musical, but I'm not. But I can do more of the art and the wine. Like visual art.
I love that. Very cool. So you're in beautiful Paso Robles, but I know you travel, and I know, again, you've lived in Italy. Where in the world, what wine region in the world is next on your bucket list?
I have been just itching to go to southern Italy. I've been to Sicily a long time ago, and I've been south of Rome and Naples more recently, but I want to go to Puglia and investigate the Primitivo. We actually grow our Zinfandel that we make is a Primitivo. And I just think it would be really inspiring. So there or Greece. I've had some incredible Greek wines lately, and I would love to go visit and see what's going on.
And for people listening who want to come to Paso Robles, where can they find you? And are you open 7 days a week? And how do they make a reservation?
So yes, our tasting room is on York Mountain, and it is very welcoming. We are by appointment, so we can treat everyone with the care that and explain the brand and the wines that have the time for them. So we are located on York Mountain, and we are about 10 miles from the 101 on 46 West. And you can go to epicwines.com and make an appointment for a tasting or give us a call. That's how you find us.
Fantastic. Jordan, thank you for joining us today on Wine Soundtrack. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I enjoyed talking to you, and I'm looking forward to delving into these wines now.
Thank you, Allison. Thanks for those awesome questions that were so different than what I normally get asked. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.